words, and it's really good to see everybody. So before I offer thoughts about our show, I want to take a moment to acknowledge this moment that we face as a nation. Last week, George Floyd, an African-American man, was murdered by a police officer. He died crying out for his mother and begging to breathe. It is horrific that this happened and tragic that George Floyd's name is part of a long list of African Americans who have been needlessly killed in this country and part of a legacy of racism that continues to be a stain on our democracy and our nation. We must do better. Many have taken to the streets in peaceful protest, whether it's here in Riverdale or other places in the city. Some have cynically exploited this time for looting. It's a scary time. I'll share more thoughts in an email to the show tomorrow, but I want to let you know that on Friday night, we will welcome Pastor Marcia Stanley from the Creston Avenue Baptist Church, along with two young men who are part of her worship team. As most of you know, over the past several years, we've been deepening our relationship with members of this church, which is primarily African American. When I reached out to Pastor Stanley in fellowship last week, I offered that we would love to come to her services on Sunday to show our support and love. She immediately said that what she preferred was to come and address our congregation. It will be a powerful service of holy listening and presence, part of a more sustained response from our show. But before we begin our meeting, I just want us to pause for a moment of silence and pray that the memories of George Floyd and so many others will be a blessing to us because they spur us to introspection and to action. At Purim time, the world turned upside down for all of us. Megillat Esther is a book all about sudden shifts that destabilize worlds, and they call this upside down world in the Megillah v'nahafochu. Everything is topsy-turvy. I understand that phrase now more than I ever did. So many of the things that we depend on, our routines, the ability to be with people that we love, how we do work and school, and so much more, all of it was different once the coronavirus entered the world. Guided by the leadership of our shul, Cliff, who is so wise, our lay leaders who are so hardworking and dedicated and thoughtful, our medical advisory committee, who offered us insight and taught us how one goes through a pandemic, our incredible, incredible staff. We changed almost everything about the shul. We found new ways to connect with each other, emunah groups and phone calls, a communal poem replaced Kiddush. We learned how to conduct virtual services and classes and meetings and starim, willing ourselves during those moments, during this moment, to feel like we're in the same room despite the screens that separate us. We tried to ensure that everyone had enough to eat, that they were safe, that they knew that they were not alone. We got it right a lot of the time, and we missed things. And hopefully we fix those. Some of the most challenging parts of this time were life cycle events. But our bar and bat mitzvah family showed remarkable grace and flexibility as they pioneered the Beit Mitzvah, where they were in their homes and we were in our homes. Those kids were all superstars, turning these life cycle events into incredibly, incredibly powerful moments. Babies were born and welcomed into the covenant, and families celebrated weddings in ways that they could not have imagined. And of course, we mourned. We mourned so many losses, some because of the coronavirus, others we don't really know, and others because of other factors. And while the overwhelming news of deaths across our city, state, country, and the world could have numbed us to the pain of people in our community who were sick or grieving loved ones, the opposite turned out to be true. You offered material and emotional support to the people who were ill. You came to Zoom funerals and shivas and figured out what that could be like. You cooked and you called. Families in mourning listened carefully and quietly as I told them that the funerals for their loved ones would need to be small. There would be so many changes. But my commitment to them was that as long as health regulations permitted, I would be there, even if it was only me, to ensure that their loved ones would be buried with dignity. I've cycled through many emotions over these months: shock and sadness and anger, being energized by new challenges, amazed at the commitment that so many people have shown to this community, privileged to be a part of the Riverdale Jewish community that has come together, the interfaith community in Riverdale, along with loneliness and frustration and more. And I know that it's been hard for so many. Part of what got me through this time was you, your notes of encouragement, reaching out to talk when you just needed to connect, your understanding that I and the rest of the staff and leadership were working harder than we have ever worked to adjust to this new reality. All of this was greatly appreciated. Nafohu, this upside down world challenged and continues to challenge us in ways that we could not have imagined. One of the things I appreciate about Megillat Esther is that Esther and Mordechai adjust to the new order as we have. They find ways to move forward despite not knowing what tomorrow would bring. And we're doing that as well. As Cliff said, we don't know how long the current state of quarantine will last for us in this form, and so we're making plans to move forward, and I mean making plans in the plural. And as we think about the next weeks and months, we have begun to think in terms of scenario A and B and C. We're going to plan out all of those and then make choices depending on how things play out, and some of those we won't know until we get there exactly which plan we will implement. Following the advice of our medical team, we hope that soon we'll be able to open the show for small minyanim during the week. Our models take into account that we don't know exactly when that's going to start, which minyanim will be included, when that might include Shabbat services, what a Torah service could look like, and so much more. We do know that whatever we do will attempt to manage risk, as well as offering many ways for people to be a part of what we are doing. Under the leadership of Liba Kornfeld, our ritual chair, we have a task force working on models for the high holidays. These will not be like any high holidays that we have experienced. There was a moment in a conversation with the medical committee where people were talking about how these high holidays will just not be the same. And the conversation went on, and I said at one point, I said, this is devastating, right? Like, to think about the holidays, right? My favorite time of the year, where we are all in the same place for a period of time, focused on the same goals or parallel goals, right? It's not going to happen like that. And I think that we need to know that for health reasons, our sanctuary, our parallel service, our tent, our children's service will not run as they have in the past. We'll not all be together in the building at the same time. And there is a sadness and loss in this that we must acknowledge. And so scenarios. Our committee is trying to see what combination of programming will create a rich experience for every member of the shul. And so we're asking questions like, what is safe? We ask that a lot. What might be safe in a few months? We ask that a lot too. What can we do in the days leading up to the holidays to create a feeling of introspection and community and the connection to Judaism that we revel in during those days of the holidays? Could we train 50 shofar blowers to sound the shofar in apartment building courtyards during Elul and on Rosh Hashanah? What would it look like for smaller groups of people to cycle through the building over each of the holidays? Could we offer longer and shorter service options for people who want different experiences? Is it feasible to have satellite services outside of the synagogue so that so more people can experience the holidays? How can we create the feeling of standing in the hallway and talking with your friends, seeing people you haven't seen in a year? For people who cannot be in shul or choose to not be in shul, how can we provide a rich experience? I know that many of you are thinking about this. The conservative movement issued opinions on the use of technology and how to run services, minyanim, saying Kaddish, that I'm reading and studying carefully. These are complicated topics legally and emotionally. It's very complicated for me personally. This has potential implications for the rest of the year as well. So like I said, I'm studying, and I'll share my views with the leadership of the synagogue and with all of you as soon as I can, but no later than the end of June. I do know that we will be using technology in some way during the holidays, but as we're learning, that can take many forms. Technology can be an engaging video that's produced over the summer that people can download for use before or during the holidays that lead people through the services in a beautiful and powerful way. It can be Rosh Hashanah Mariv and Kol Nidre that is conducted before the holidays through Zoom and other technology. It can be some kind of live streaming during the holidays where what happens on the Bima, assuming we are on the Bima, is broadcast out to people who cannot be in shul. Think the Kotel Cam with sound. And there's lots of other variations of all of that. And we're learning about what technology offers. And again, I'm thinking about how that all comports with my understanding of Judaism and what are the needs of our congregation. I know that many of you have thoughts about the holidays and in general about how things are going to play out during the year. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I would welcome an email that describes what you're looking for as part of this year's holiday experience that will be like no other. What are your hopes for how you will feel during this time? How can the shul facilitate that? If there are specific ideas that you have, share them. If it's just a feeling, if it's just like a general thing that you want to share, like this is what I want you to know, this is what I'd love to be able to feel afterwards, that's also helpful. Is there a kind of technology that would work for you? And is there a kind that would not work for you? I know that the letters you send will be thoughtful and hope that they will be written with an understanding that these are unprecedented times. And I hope that we can navigate a course through them with integrity and compassion and openness and love, the love that I feel for all of you. Put in the subject of the emails, high holiday thoughts, just like that, high holiday thoughts, and I will read them. I promise you I will not respond to any of the emails you send me except with the words, thank you. But I will read each one of them and take them to heart. The same spirit of scenarios A, B, and C governs our planning for adult education and other programming next year. How do we conduct life cycle events and everything else? And we're doing it all with an attempt to be as creative and inclusive as possible. In the Megillah, the response to Nahafochu, the world upside down, comes at the end of the story with the words Layudim Aita Ora V'Simcha. The Jews once again knew light and joy. This comes after much pain and a time when it was probably hard to know what was the right way to act. I imagine that when it was all over, the Jews of Shushan faced hard questions. It was difficult, I'm sure, for them to remember the time before coronavirus. I mean, Haman. The world was different than before. They were different than before, but they were able to see light and experience joy. They came together for kiddushes and services. They learned together. They supported one another. They hung out in the hallway of shul. And I know that this will be the same with us. And until then, I just want you to know that I am with every one of you, and I think about all of you all the time. I want to offer great thanks to the members of our staff, our lay leadership, and each one of you. I remain honored to be your rabbi and humbled by the trust you place in me.
Amen. Thank you.